We're going to talk about what has happened in Ukraine on this day of the Russian invasion. We'll examine the actions and the strategies, both military and political. Now, if this is your first time watching, my name is Darren Gertis. I'm a professor who's built multiple leadership programs at Charleston Southern University. So we'll also view these events through the lens of leadership. And I also wrote a book about Zelensky called I Need Ammunition, Not a Ride, and you can find it on Amazon. Wednesday, June 22nd. So I'm going to start with the Voice of America, and there's a lot more political than there is military today. I'm just going to go through, I'm not going to read all of these, but I think some of these are really interesting. I just highlighted as I'm updating my book. Russian food and fertilizer, a senior U.S. official said on Wednesday, stressing the such goods were not subject to U.S. sanctions over Moscow's war in Ukraine. He said, quote, nothing is stopping Russia from exporting its grain or fertilizer except its own policies and actions. Now, I don't know if there are European sanctions on food and grain. I don't believe that there are. But there was someone quoted, and I have it as I sent it to myself in an email, the article that a high official in Russia that said, like, we're counting on this famine to put pressure on, like, that's what we're counting on. So that's kind of a really terrible game to be doing that, but that's not stopping them. But they will say, well, hey, look, as soon as those sanctions go, we'll be able to provide the grain in order to provide pressure on India and Africa and places like that. Terrible game. So June 22nd was the honoring the memory of everyone who died in World War II. It was the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine, and when the Nazis turned on Russia in Operation, was it Barbarossa? I might have that wrong, but when they turned on the East. And we're fighting for a new victory. No enemy will break our will. We remember the victims of World War II. We believe in good, peace, and justice. This was Zelensky being requoted at the from the embassy. I'm going to end on this one with the Russians' response to that. And not the response to that, but the response to World War II's the date. The Russian Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov, arrived in Iran on Wednesday for talks boosting trade and energy and cooperation between the two countries. So Tehran and Moscow have huge oil and gas reserves, but are constrained by sanctions that limit their ability to export the output. Okay, so they're going to work on trade and energy and cooperation as they're dealing with Western sanctions. So if Russia can use Iran as a conduit to export its oil to other places, then it could still keep in the business. And so keep an eye on that. There was a drone strike that started at that hit a Russian oil refinery on Wednesday. No one was hurt, but the oil created fire, or the oil refinery strike created a fire. It's about 15 miles outside of the Ukrainian border. So Ukrainian officials haven't claimed responsibility, but you'll see when we get to the Institute for the Study of War, they have confirmed that it was from Ukraine. India is providing a safety certification for dozens of ships managed by a subsidiary of a top Russian shipping group. And so what's going on here is simply that it's another conduit, right? So if India can become a conduit for Russian oil, they can spread their oil in other places. I'm not going to be talking about Zelensky's speeches, at least not in this one. I might do an entire separate one. These are Danish mine clearers, by the way. They're in Ukraine clearing mines. It's pretty awesome. I'm not going to touch on Zelensky's speech in this episode. I might do a separate one just talking about that, but I'm not sure. Ukrainian troops on the eastern town of Severodonetsk are struggling to resupply themselves under a barrage of Russian artillery fire. Okay, we're going to talk about this in just a moment, but yes, they're shelling. There's not a lot of movement, but there's a lot of shelling going on today. Lithuania will be prepared if Russia disconnects from the regional power grid. You know, I love Lithuania. I've been to Lithuania 3 times. It's a brilliant place, and I love the spirit of the people. So here's the article with Lithuania. And this is the article from Reuters. Lithuania will be prepared if Russia disconnects from the regional power grid, said the president, but no military confrontation is expected, he tells Reuters.
And a little bit further below, he said, we are ready and we are prepared for unfriendly actions from Russia in response. Now, Lithuania not only cut off the rail of sanctions goods from Kaliningrad to Russia, which is like cutting off Hawaii from the U.S., it's kind of like that. Um, they not only cut off the rail, but they also cut off the gas to Kaliningrad. So they are expecting retaliatory measures. But listen to this: we're ready for and prepared for unfriendly actions such as disconnection. He said in an interview, but it goes on. Let me scroll down. Lithuania installed equipment on its power link to Poland last year to connect with the continental European Union grid quickly in an insurance policy in case Russia cuts off the flow of electricity, potentially causing blackouts. Now, there was a lot of talk in the Western media of Nord Stream 2 and that kind of thing, where the Germans were getting pipeline oil directly from Russia, and it was making them more dependent. While the Germans were just getting kind of greedy and like going like, yeah, we want more of this cheap oil, the Lithuanians were thinking, you know what, there's going to be a day. And so the president was smart. So I appreciate what the Lithuanians were doing here. Okay, let's scroll down a little bit more. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said on Wednesday that he wants to discuss the outlines of a Marshall Plan for Ukraine. Okay, so this is an AP article. And so what I often do is I go to an aggregator like the Voice of America, or believe it or not, Al Jazeera does a really good job aggregating. The UK, The Guardian, The Times does it, the Washington Post does it. And you can find them in a number of places. And then I go out to the actual articles and I read them. German Schultz talked about he wants a Marshall Plan for Ukraine. He's talking to the Group of Seven. It used to be the Group of Eight. They excluded Russia after 2014's invasion of Ukraine. The chancellor told Germany's parliament that rebuilding Ukraine will be a task for generations. I believe that. I think that's a true statement. It will take a long time to rebuild. Regional Governor Vitaly Kim said earlier on Wednesday that 7 missiles had hit Mykolaiv. And so now I highlighted that because sometimes we think like it's only happening in the Donbas. No, it's happening in multiple places in the Donbas, in Mykolaiv, in Kharkiv. It's happening all over. The missile strikes are still happening. It's just it gets short shrift. 2 drones, and this was the drones flying that hit the major Russian oil field, or oil refinery. I'm sorry, not oil field. Russia strikes Kharkiv throughout the day, and this is what I was just talking about. Continuing on Wednesday morning, where the worst 2 weeks of the war in the area for normal life had been returning to Ukraine. Russian forces are now hitting the city of Kharkiv in the same way that they were previously hitting Mariupol, with the aim of terrorizing the population. Now, I doubt that they're going to actually get into the city, but they can still bomb the crap out of them, and that's what they're doing. And it's really a terror campaign, and just let's just destroy the city. And Kharkiv is the second largest city in Ukraine. I moved to South Carolina. This will be my 12th year teaching at Charleston Southern, and just going into, and I actually know the geography of Ukraine better than I know the geography of South Carolina at this point, which is kind of sad. Okay, this was an interesting thing. Going to the dentist has never been a welcome task, but in Russia, it's gotten a lot worse. Russian dental industry is almost entirely dependent on European and U.S. imports of materials. And so now they're facing a frozen supply chain. Dentists are scrambling and weighing alternatives. And this one person was quoted as saying, "I still remember what Soviet dentistry is. I remember those yellow fillings and iron teeth. No, thank you. I don't want to return to the USSR." Yeah, well, I mean, that's what's going on. That's what your country is doing to this other country. So tell them to stop. I know it could be jail time for you if you do tell them to stop. It's just, man. Okay, draft declaration leaked of this week's European Union summit. They propose a candidate status for Ukraine and Moldova. It's not final, but it's in the works, and it looks like it's going to be offering them candidate status. So that's really good. Okay. And then there's only one or two more things here. Finland has been arming for decades just in case of a Russian attack, but the head of the Finnish army, the General Timo Kiven, said a crucial factor is that the Finns would be motivated to fight. The most important line of defense is the one between the ears. Like he's saying, like, hey, if it comes, we're ready. Um, they weren't thinking this just 4 months ago, so that's really something. And then the last thing, well, I think it's the last thing. Well, not the last thing. South Korea is setting up a NATO delegation because they're looking at, well, what could possibly happen with China and Taiwan and South Korea and Japan, and other players in that region are thinking, we got to be braced for what could happen next here. Even if it's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, it could go wrong in very big ways very quickly, and they're gearing up against that. Um, I'm going to talk about one other thing before I come back to that. So it's Russia marks a day of remembrance that we just talked about, that Zelensky just marked, where the Nazis invaded. Quote: Now this is according to Reuters. When forces of Nazi Germany invaded Soviet Union in World War II, so the Russians' response were, just as nowadays in 1941, the Nazis prepared provocations in advance to discredit our state. The Russian Defense Ministry said, "Okay, what kind of la la land are they in? There's no more Nazis. It's there are, but they're like this big, and your pretext just really isn't working anymore." Okay, so this is what I wanted to park on as the last thing. Russia is this is the UK Ministry of Defense, and I'm about to go to the UK Ministry of Defense page. So, and I generally do this just to make sure I'm up to date. They give a great estimate of what's going on. Okay, so here is the UK Ministry of Defense. They're talking about there's heavy shelling that continues in Russia, which pushes as Russia pushes the envelope to the Severodonetsk area via Izium in the north and Popasna in the south. Okay, so let's go to the deep state map and we'll look at this. Over the last day, there hasn't been a lot of actual ground taken. Here's the day before, and here is the 22nd, 21st, and come on, 22nd. So you'll see that what's actually happened is very minor in around Mykolaiv. There's been almost nothing in other major regions, and that's the hotbed area is over here in Lysychansk, Severodonetsk. And so what they're talking about is Slovansk coming down from Izium, Slovansk, and coming from Lyman. There's been shelling, but there hasn't been a lot of ground real estate exchanged. Severodonetsk, you got to watch out because they're trying to enclose here between these pockets. They're going to close off this pocket, and then they're going to try to close between here and encircle those people here. They're going to have to fall back if it becomes inevitable. According to the Institute for the Study of War, here's their assessment for the day. Reinforced Russian air defense systems make it difficult for drones. Russian military continues to comment on the shortcomings of the morale, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, Russian forces continue the offensive towards Slovodonetsk, and in the southern axis made some marginal gains, but it's basically in shelling, and that's pretty much it. That's the UK Ministry of Defense is talking about heavy shelling. By the way, as of June 16th, the DPR, that's the militia, from the Ukrainian militia that's pro-Russian, acknowledged military personnel killed in action were about 10,000, little north of 10,000. That's about a 55% rate of wounded and casualties. That is higher than what happened on D-Day to our servicemen, which was about 50% survived. So, just think about what's happening to these Ukrainian pro-Russian militia that are actually being kind of conscripted and pushed into the battle. So I'm going to end with that. If you have time, if you're done with my video, so go watch Band of Brothers. If you haven't watched it, it's an awesome movie. And one last thing, a shout out to my daughter who got me this awesome t-shirt for my birthday just a few days ago. I need ammunition, not a ride. Pretty awesome. Hey, thanks for your time. Talk to you later.
Hey, if this video was helpful, hit like to help others find it in YouTube's algorithm. Subscribe so that you can stay informed. And one more thing, if you are moved to contribute to the humanitarian aid for Ukraine, I have a link below for Samaritan's Purse. If you want to give, be sure to give only to reputable organizations. There's a lot of scammers out there. Thanks for your time.